Let's go ahead and get this started. First off, my name is Cynthia Truitt, and I am the Executive Director with the 29 Palms Chamber of Commerce. If I haven't met you already, welcome. We do want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to come in and sit during this presentation today, and we're super excited to have our presenter, Scott White, with us today. And also special thanks to Copper Mountain College and to the new interim superintendent and CEO, Jeff Cummings. Jeff, where are you? There's Jeff. So thank you, Jeff, for allowing us to use the facility today. We're super excited to have them on board as a partner for all of our chambers of commerce, and thank you for your continued support. And also to Jolie, if you can pass on a special thank you to her. Hopefully you all are familiar with our area chambers of commerce: Morongo Valley, Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, and 29 Palms. Collectively, all four of us are in support of this organization, the Joshua Tree Gateway Communities, and we'll be speaking to you about this today. Most of all, we would like to recognize the people that are currently members of the Joshua Tree Gateway Communities Tourism Committee. And if those people who are present today would just stand up briefly so we can just recognize those in the room that sit on the committee. Stand up. Come on, Jerry. And I'm standing up too. So you can see they're scattered throughout the group. These people make up all of the communities across what we identify as the Morongo Basin. We'll talk a little bit about that in the future. Here's a little bit of history for you. A Morongo Basin Tourism Committee has existed for many decades, and this is led and been held together by our area chambers of commerce, primarily Cheryl Nan Kurbist, who was the past CEO and president of the Yucca Valley Chamber of Commerce. She was the consistent glue throughout these many years. When the Morongo Basin Regional Economic Development Consortium came into existence in the early 2000s, they commissioned the Economic Development Report, which cost a little over $20,000. What this report found was that tourism was our ready-to-go, right-now economic engine for our area. It was at this point that the Chamber's executive directors collectively formed the consortium's tourism committee. About 2 years ago, this tourism committee changed its name from the Consortium Tourism Committee to the Joshua Tree Gateway Communities Tourism Committee. This was due to the committee's realization that the name Morongo basically is already owned by the Morongo Casino. One, because of the high-rise building that's located on Interstate 10 that everybody is so very familiar with, and number two, because of the size of their advertising budget. Our committee has no intention of stopping the use of the Morongo Basin within our area, but we do see the value and suggest the use of Joshua Tree Gateway Communities when promoting tourism outside of our community, or the basin as we know it. The Joshua Tree Gateway Communities Committee recently moved from being a committee of the consortium to being a committee of the Desert Regional Tourism Agency. This decision was based on the consortium's lack of an active board of directors and permanent staff. We are happy to inform all of you that the Desert Regional Tourism Agency, often referred to as by the acronym of DARTA, does have an active executive director, Ms. Kelly Carson, who's standing up in the back of the room. In addition to Kelly, she also has a supporting staff, as well as an active board who currently oversees the operation of the California Welcome Center located in Yucca Valley. Our hope is to collectively work together as a whole for the sake of tourism. Well, that's a brief history on who we are. Now for the program. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you to Mr. Scott White, President and CEO of the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitors Bureau. That's a mouthful. And please help in welcoming Mr. Scott White.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Well, thank you for having me here this afternoon. It's a beautiful day. We're on the verge of getting out of summer and going into fall, which makes all of us exciting. She said our name was a mouthful. You should have seen our old name, which was Palm Springs Desert Resort Communities Convention and Visitors Authority. So that's politics right there. That's how that name came about. So it's not really done on consumer research. So what I thought I would do today is we put together a nice little deck on who we are as a CVB, kind of what we've been doing, and then I'll kind of migrate into setting up a marketing district, some of your options, the pros and cons, and just, we really want to make this interactive. So throughout the presentation, feel free to raise your hand. It's not, I don't want to be here just a talking head to you all, but we wanted to make sure we got you enough information that hopefully gives you enough tools and resources to make decisions and try to figure out where you want to go from where you are today, because I agree. Tourism for this community in this region is probably going to be your #1 economic indicator, probably beyond the Marines. You know, when we look at search words, the #2 search word, you know, on Google after Palm Springs is Joshua Tree. So it's very, very powerful. I think 70,000, 80,000 people a month are looking for Joshua Tree. So we want to make sure we get them the right information and share all that with you. So a little bit about, let's make sure I can do this right. Okay. So a little bit about the CVB and our mission and kind of who we are. The CVB was set up in 1989 as the regional tourism marketing district for the Coachella Valley. And basically, at the time, what was happening was Palm Springs had their tourism agency, Down Valley was growing, they were building resorts, and the Down Valley mayors and resorts wanted to be part of the Palm Springs tourism agency, and the mayor at the time said no. So they developed this particular agency, and it's gone through all kinds of evolutions over the years, and it's definitely got a much healthier and a much more cooperative type relationship with all of the cities, especially with the Palm Springs Bureau of Tourism. So we're a joint powers authority, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. So we're a little bit different. But we represent all of the 9 different cities throughout the Coachella Valley. The one city that we still represent, but technically we don't, which is Coachella. Coachella does not have a hotel yet, so they don't pay any TOT into the CVB. They don't participate in our bid, but we still like to promote them. We think they're a great asset for the destination, and we just like to be friendly neighbors, and everybody in the other cities is okay with that. Plus, we see agricultural tourism really coming to the forefront, and we see a lot of agriculture in Coachella, and we want to really capture on that as well. So it's recognizing sometimes beyond your boundaries how you can work together to find success, and even though maybe they don't pay into anything right now, we hope that someday they will. We want to make sure we have good relationships when that time comes. So a JPA, which is a Joint Powers Authority, if you're not familiar with that, it's basically an entity permitted under law in some states. It really brings entities together. In this case, it's bringing together the 8 cities and the county. They form the JPA that allows us to really form this organization that we can, again, initiate bids, we can initiate ordinances, we can initiate all kinds of different programs. It allows the cities to pay into us. Each city had to approve the JPA. So back then, they actually went around to each city, approved what the formula funding would be, and we'll get into that a little bit as well, how the relationship will be between the cities and the organization. And as a result of that, since the JPA provides oversight. So they sign the checks on anything that's over $25,000. They approve our budget. They hire and fire me as a CEO, but they don't get into the nitty-gritty day-to-day stuff. So we try to keep the politicians, any elected officials in the room? Got one, all right, two elected officials, okay. So we have great elected officials in the Valley. But at the end of the day, they really want to focus on education, police, fire. They're really the core things that are going to help the city move forward, things that are facing them, crime and so forth. And we show tourism as an economic generator to help fund those things. But when it comes to the day-to-day operation of a tourism agency, it really should be left up to the experts or the people that really have kind of grown up in this industry, which in our case is our board of directors. And our board of directors is considered an advisory board of directors, and they're really responsible for the day-to-day operation of the CVB to a certain degree. So as an example, before I got here, and let me back up a little bit. So prior to coming to Palm Springs, I was in San Antonio for 4 years. I ran the CVB there. I grew up in California, so it was always kind of a passion to come back to California. Prior to that, I was in Phoenix for 8 years at the CVB there, and then before that, I was in the hotel industry. So I actually was in Palm Springs area from 1988 to 96, opened up the Esmeralda Hotel, if you know that one, the Renaissance in Indian Wells. So I was there, moved to Seattle and so forth. So was able to come back and now be part of the Destination Marketing Organization. So the advisory board, which is 32 members, 2 of those are JPA. They work with the CVB and our leaders, marketing, sales, PR, and so forth. And we really work with them to say, here's the direction we want to go in. They do the strategic planning. We talk to them a little bit about what the issues are. We try to use some of the funds for research and so forth and say, what are the issues facing the tourism industry? What are the priorities? So the advisory board will set the priorities for the organization. We go back and say, here's how we think as our leaders within the organization, how we think we should tackle those. They say yes, they bless them. Then they go to the JPA and say, hey, we've reviewed all of these strategies that the CVB is going to go forward with. We think they're great. Please approve the budget. Please approve the business plan and so forth. So that's really how it works in a perfect world. So the problem that happened before I got here, just to look back a little bit, was the communication between the CVB and the stakeholders really fell apart. And so the key for any organization, especially Convention and Visitors Bureau or tourism agency, whatever you decide to call yourself if you do go down that route, has to be very transparent, has to be very has to communicate, has to be very inclusive, but there has to be also a respect between the stakeholders of the board and the organization to realize, we don't like blue, we don't like red. When you start to get into that nitty-picky of colors and so forth, it really will bog down the system. So it's really finding the right people to run the tourism agency and realize that what are the strengths and what are the importance. I always tell my staff, it doesn't matter if I like this ad or that ad. What does the consumer think? Who are we targeting, and what are they important with? And I'll kind of go through some of the marketing things that we've gone through in the past and talk through that. So we're funded by 4 different funding sources. So we've actually got 2 improvement districts that are in place. We get a little bit of transient occupancy tax, and then we have private revenue. So the first one, which was the T-bid, that was set up in 2008, and that was 2% assessment on the hotels. So as you can imagine, the recession was we hit the high peak, the recession was happening. They were smart enough to see that there's going to be a problem with getting TOT from the cities because they're going to probably start to cut funding because we got to make sure we hire police and fire and take care of everything else. So they set up a business improvement district, and 2 things happened when that took place when that happened. The first thing is that the politicians realized that that money must be dedicated 100% for promotion of tourism. It cannot be earmarked for fixing a street or sidewalks and so forth. It can't be used for capital improvements. The only capital improvements that we can utilize the funds for are within our own building because it supports the organization we're in. Because over time, sometimes we have people say, hey, we want you to put money into this park or this, because we think it's tourism related. We can't do that because the law protects you for that to be sales and marketing. So that was set up in 2008. When they did that, they gave the cities 75% of the TOT back. So if you look to the right in the orange box, that's kind of the funding formula that they put in place. It's a weird formula. I don't know how they got to it, but nevertheless, that's in place. So the hotel room sales that are non-convention pay 0.006 times the total TOT, and then in 2008, they basically took it from 100% to 25%. So the cities were happy, they got 75% back. And then what we call the convention hotels, based on number of rooms and space and so forth, they pay a little over double on the revenue. So that total revenue generates for us is $1.3 million. So you can kind of get a feel for how much it used to be before. So what happened was, when I arrived in 2010, we started to do some research, and I really wanted to understand why were people, we didn't really have any research done. So a lot of the money was spent on convention sales. So everything that we were doing was focused on bringing groups to the destination, filling up the group hotels. We really didn't focus on leisure so much, PR, and so forth. So we decided to do a consumer research study out of market. We went to 11 cities. It was all done online, a few focus groups, but mostly online. And I wanted to know, why are people not coming to Palm Springs? What is their barriers? What are their perceptions and so forth? Because anybody knows Palm Springs. Is there a reporter in here? I'm going to be careful what I say. Okay. So but this is being recorded, isn't it? So we get in our little bubble, so we get in our bubble and we get comfortable with what our surroundings are, and you get a perception of what we are. And what we found is that people that live within that bubble think of us as an oasis. Well, same thing happens with visitors. Visitors that had been to the destination would describe us as an oasis. Visitors that had not been to the destination described us entirely opposite of that, as you can imagine. They came back with, it's hot all the time, there's nothing to do, I can't get there, it's for the rich people, it's a retirement community, and so on and so forth. We asked them what cities they could name beyond Palm Springs. They really couldn't name any other city beyond Palm Springs. So we shared that with the group and said, look, it's a beautiful destination. We think we got a lot going for us, but we still have a lot of work to do. We've really got to figure out a way that we can overcome these perceptions, overcome these issues, come up with a branding and marketing campaign. We really need to start communicating both nationally and internationally if we're really going to overcome some of the problems that we have. So the group said, great, let's go ahead and look into that. But as hoteliers, we're tired of the hotels being the only ones that are funding everything, right? We've got golf courses here and restaurants and attractions and everything else. So when that happened, we ended up hiring a company called Civitas. And Civitas is a tourism improvement district expert. And I wish they would have hired them in 2008 because we're trying to undo all the language from 2008 and fix it and make it cleaner today. But John Lambeth, who runs that organization, came in and looked at everything that we're doing, evaluated our current agreement, evaluated our current bid, looked at the opportunity to bring in golf courses and restaurants and so forth, and really basically told the board, you really can't do that, because the bid is really more, the way the bid is described is those benefits that when you take the assessment in, whatever you're doing must benefit the assessed businesses 100%. So all it takes is one restaurant, one golf course to say, hey, we don't get any visitors, we don't really benefit from this when we're assessing my customers, I'm going to sue you. So it's that simple that they can do that. So the board decided, okay, let's just stick with the hotels for now. Let's let maybe the golf courses, we can talk them into later doing their own bid on their own. Restaurants can do their own bid on their own. Maybe we can help work with them on this creative marketing and work together on that. So let maybe those industries assess themselves, create their own bids. Let's just focus on hotels. So at the time, we decided we wanted to bring in the small hotels and the vacation rentals along with a 1% increase in the tourism marketing district. There were some legal things that were going on in San Diego. San Diego's bid was being challenged. The mayor over there was, really doing some weird things and so forth. So there was a little bit of a nervousness that these bids may become an issue within the courts. So John Lambeth came back and said, hey, since your first tourism bid was set up prior to all of that, let's set it up separately just in case if something happens legally in San Diego, we're protected at least on the first bid. So that's why we set up a second bid under the 1%. And how we promoted that was really that all those dollars were going to be focused on consumer marketing. Let me just go real quick here. I've already kind of talked about this, but so when we did the tourism marketing district, I went around, we had about 100 meetings with about 200 people. The small hotels were on board for the most part. The vacation rental people were on board for the most part, with the exception of about 3 or 4 people in the small hotels and 1 or 2 people in the vacation rental who had a very loud voice. And it became clear that they were going to muddy the waters, so to speak. The information that was going out was inaccurate, there was a lot of lies, there was a lot of miscommunication, and so forth. So and we were trying to do this in a short time frame. So here we are, this is January of 2013, I guess it would have been, yep. January of 2013. We were trying to get this all done and approved and on the books for July 1st. So we had 6 months we were trying to put together this tourism marketing district. So the large hotels said, let's just add 1% to ours. We'll bring the small hotels and vacation rentals on at a later date. And we'll talk a little bit about the process of a tourism marketing district as we go through here. So our tourism marketing district, basically how we promoted it to the valley, to the elected officials, and to our partners was that this was going to be used for consumer marketing to help overcome those perceptions, those barriers that had been identified in that study that we did back in 2011. So we raised $3 million, and when we raised the $3 million, we created a media plan. We finally are marketing ourselves nationally, internationally. We hired a digital content manager. We hired an editorial manager. We enhanced our international efforts. We added China to our our rep firm process. We have one in the UK, Australia, and Germany, and we knew that China was going to be an important one for our destination. So the tourism marketing district this past fiscal year generated $3.1 million. So 2,500 of that was used for marketing and promotions. About 237,000 was used for research, and 330,000 was used for marketing and production. We had to create ads, we had to create videos and so forth. So the production may go down in the future as well, and then more money will flow to the production line. So just really quick, I'll go through just what we've done with our marketing district. One of the issues that we have as a destination is air service. We have great air service from January through April into May, and then we lose 2/3 of our air service come June. So it's really difficult to fly out of Palm Springs. For those of you that fly out of there, it becomes very difficult. Prices go up, air service goes down. So from then until, say, October, November, it starts to slowly come back up again. So some of the funds we're stashing away into reserve because we want to do a minimum revenue guarantee to help with the air service. Give you an example. American Airlines flies nonstop to Chicago. So years ago, they would start that service in September and go all the way to June. Then they moved it to October. Then they moved it to November. And then this year, they said, we're going to move it to November 17th. So we pick up the phone and said, we need you to really start at September 15th. We went back and forth. They said, okay, we'll start at October 2nd, but you need to do a revenue guarantee. I said, okay, what are we talking about here? Well, $1.8 million is the amount of money we need to generate from this date to that date. I said, okay. I'm a government agency, so I don't just have $1.8 million sitting around. They go, no, no, no. Whatever we don't generate, if we generate $1.8 million, you don't write us a check for anything. If we generate $1.6 million, you write us a check for $200,000. You have to give us the gap between the two. So, so we agreed on a cap for that, and they agreed to it. And American said, we are normally doing these contracts for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. Very rarely are we ever doing contracts for 30, 35, 36 days. But they liked the destination, and we were just moving an existing route earlier into the process, so they were okay with it. But that's kind of one of the things that we're going to be targeting as we go forward is how do we get that Chicago flight to be year-round? How do we get a New York flight to come in high season, 7 days a week and so forth? So we really want to use some of those funds for air service development. We knew that we can't spend all the money in air service, because if you spend all the money in air service, then you can't market the flight and the flights will be empty. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg. So we have to do a little bit of both. At the same time, we're trying to figure out what other funding can we have to help promote ourselves and generate more revenue for the airport. And the airport can't do it because the FAA has basically said you can only use marketing support, but you can't do revenue guarantees. So FAA regulations won't let the airport do it. So it really encumbers onto the Chamber of Commerce, us, or some other entity. We focused on golf and tennis a little bit, on weddings. You can see here some of the different things that we went into. We did a lot of TV. Most of our TV was into Southern California, into Canada. So in Canada in the wintertime, we had a lot of TV spots. It always kind of ran at the news hour with the weather and the hockey reports. So all winter long, between the weather and the hockey reports, we were running our commercials. We wanted to make sure that we had their full attention. And so that was quite successful. This year we're going to do a lot more TV than we did in the past. And we did out-of-home. Out-of-home, we did some outdoor billboards in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Minneapolis. We took over the Mall of America. Well, we had 24 outdoor billboards, indoor, I guess, with the Mall of America. Started that in November, right before the Black Friday, that kind of early November. Ran it all the way through, I think, March or April.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did you hire an outside agency to handle that for you? Obviously.
Yes and no. We have one gentleman, Jeff Moralia, who I've worked with for about 15 years. We didn't have, at the time when we were doing all of this, we didn't have the budget to hire an agency. Agencies can be very expensive. So I went to Jeff and I said, I can't pay you what you're worth, but will you come work on this project for us, help us with the brand, help us with the marketing and so forth. And if this all comes to fruition, we'll be able to get you more dollars to get you more support and so forth. We do have a media buying agency that buys all the media for us, which is very important because they can analyze all the data, the demographics, so we can be very specific when we know we're doing a TV commercial, where we're doing it, what programs we're doing, what time of day we're doing it. Same thing with the print advertising. They can negotiate all the value add. So what they're paid for, or how they're paid, is we come up with an agreement based on the total budget of the media plan. We figure out how many hours it's going to take for them to analyze it, traffic it, take care of everything, and then we basically say, okay, you get the commissions from the media plan up to this point, and then it stops. So it kind of, so we're kind of indirectly paying them from that standpoint. In group business, we spent a little bit, did some advertising on the group business, and then of course digital promotions were really important for us. Travelzoo, TripAdvisor, all the online publications and so forth. And then of course we're also cooperating and participating with Visit California, which is, so Visit California is kind of up here, then you've kind of got us as the regional agency, then you've got like what we call city agencies, then you have like the hotel retail component. So that's kind of the bubble between all of that. So some of the ads that we've created. So these are just a few of the samples. We probably created about 14 different ads trying to cover all the different niches. One of the things that came out in the survey, which was, I thought, hilarious, is that people said there's nothing to do there. So what do you think the number one thing is people want to do on their vacation? Do nothing. So when you read the report, you go to the next page. The first page you go, there's nothing to do there. And you're like, okay. Then you flip the page over and you go, they ask them, what is the number one thing you want to, what are the things you want to do on vacation? Number one was do nothing. It's like, well, perfect. What's wrong with these people? So how do you show do nothing in an ad? So we're still trying to get my head around that one. So some of the examples there. So a few years ago, we were approached by the state of California to say there was this desert regional grant process that the state has. They put about $30,000 aside, and there's, I think, 5 or 6 different regions, Northern California, Central Coast, and so forth. And it wasn't really, from what I can remember, it wasn't very organized, and the grants weren't being fulfilled. They couldn't get everybody together between the north, central, south, desert regions, whatever it may be, trying to get everybody together. They just couldn't get it, and every year they were passing on the grant of $30,000. So the state came to us and said, can you help organize this? Can you help? Can you apply for the grant, and can you do something that will help benefit the region? So we said, okay, we'll take it on. And we've got it. I had to go to the board. We dedicated Tomas. I don't know if anybody knew at the time we had Tomas in our office. He was working with Ashley in tourism, with George and everybody else. And since then, we've added, I think, 500 or 550 businesses onto, we created this website for the California deserts. We've done FAMs up here. We've done pop-up banners. We've done the maps, which is in the back, in 3 different languages, in German, French, and Chinese. So, I mean, I can tell you, we've gone way beyond the $30,000. I think we've invested about $75,000 on our own into a lot of this, between staff time and the maps and the printing and so forth. So you get a booth at Powwow, represented at Powwow. It shows the opportunity to meet with the stakeholders, San Diego Travel Show, the NTA Travel Exchange, Go West Summit, and so forth. So Joyce, who's in PR, Ashley, Tracy, and so forth, they're constantly promoting this region, probably more this region than the central in the north than anything else. But we really are trying to create a robust website for you all for this region on behalf of the state. I know we're going to be adding a lot of tabs this year. We're going to continue. Each year we're trying to add more and more into the mix because we feel like there's great synergy between us and this region, especially with the international travelers. So we want to grow international travelers. We think part of the hook for the international travelers is this region, obviously. So we want to make sure that we can effectively promote you and our region together. So
I know that you did the first map on really short notice, and you just kind of.
we messed that one up, yeah.
I was wondering if
Yeah.
that did get corrected. in terms
It did.
of This area
Yeah.
being part of the Palm Springs greater.
Yeah, it did get fixed,
Great,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Vicki?
Are we doing IPW again this year?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this year is in Orlando, I think. Yeah. So Orlando. Yeah, it's too bad. So, you know, hopefully everybody feels like the relationship between us and the region and so forth and the state is effective. Hopefully, maybe through all of this, as you start to organize better and you create this marketing district and so forth, that's something maybe you take on or take over or however we work together on, whatever it may be. It certainly isn't our objective to always own this, but we certainly feel like we wanted to make sure that we weren't losing the money from the state. We felt like it was important to then use those funds to develop the website and the printing and go to the booth and the booth pop-ups and everything else that we can do to make it effective, and how do we kind of continue to work together to make sure we're all kind of communicating the same message, we're having the right dialogue with each other, we're trying to do the right things to fill your hotels, to bring people up here, to drive revenue. And we don't look at it as a competition. I certainly don't look at it as a competition. I look at it as a certain benefit to the traveler. And one of the things that we did early on when I got there was we eliminated membership. And when I got there, we probably had 400 or 500 members. And the problem with that is that when you have a membership, the general public has access to Google. So they don't like members. That's an automatic filter for them. The press doesn't like members. And so there really wasn't, nobody could give me any good argument to keep membership other than revenue. And I said, well, when you start focusing on revenue, then you start to really alienate yourself from the consumer. When you alienate yourself from the consumer, you start losing your revenue. So it may be a slow cycle, but you're gonna, you're creating this environment. So what we've done is, everybody's in for free, right? So everybody can be on the website for free. We'll give you a basic listing. So we went from 500 or so partners to 1,600. So now all of a sudden I got 1,600 partners. Every restaurant, anybody that's involved with tourism, you're on the website. Now, if you want to make sure your listing's at the very top, or you want to make sure you have your ad here, or you want to be in the visitor guide, whatever it may be, here's the different options that you can buy into. So it's more of a marketing promotional co-op. We didn't lose a dime. Not one, we didn't lose anything. We didn't lose anybody. If anything, we've gained more fans. We were much highly were regarded by the politicians, because now the small business in Indio that says, oh, I don't want to join the CVB, I'm not going to pay $600 a year for that. Now they're in for free. Now they're excited. Hey, I got my basic listing up there. You want to add more images, you want to add more words, you can keep stepping up, stepping up. So we try to make it affordable and easy for everybody to be included on that. So what's also happened from that, because now we represent the whole valley, we've got 1,600 businesses, I can't tell you how many times people have come to us and said, can we blast out a message to them? Can we communicate with them? I said, sure. So we did it for free for a while, but now we're starting to charge a little bit. And so you can start making some revenue off of that, because now you become powerful because your base of your partners have grown substantially. So the partnership model, I think, is an important one. So creating your own tourism marketing district. How many people are familiar with a tourism marketing district? Couple of hands. Okay. So a tourism marketing district really provides a stable source of funding directly from the assessed businesses, in our case the hotels, back to the organization that's going to be really overseeing those funds and utilizing those funds in a way that the board, the advisory group, dictates to a certain degree on how those funds should be directed. So really, they can have all kinds of different businesses. You can go to some towns, some city centers, they might have a downtown business district where the businesses pay through property taxes, so they can have ambassadors or clean up the street, put up signs and banners and so forth. So a business district doesn't just have to be for tourism related. It can be a central business district, it can be around a school, it can be all kinds of different things. So there's all kinds of different options to create business districts, have those businesses be assessed, pay into the assessment, and then use those funds to benefit those businesses. So the key is that whatever funds are collected must benefit the businesses being assessed. If that makes sense. So who manages a TMD? Let me go one more. I normally don't do PowerPoints. I like to just talk, but we keep doing the PowerPoints. So it can be a nonprofit corporation. It could be a 501c3 or a 501c6. Sorry. It could be a chamber of commerce. It could be many different organizations that can actually be the one that actually manages the TMD. Again, we talked a little bit about funding and how they can be funded. It's important that you have full support as you're creating the tourism marketing district. So one of the things that we've found is, again, even though it's only the hoteliers that are paying into the tourism marketing district, we're all inclusive in terms of on our board we have restaurateurs, attractions, and so forth, because it is a tourism industry, and they realize that they're being funded by the hotels for this effort. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they're part of this process. We want to make sure they have a voice. They're letting us know what's happening. They're great advisors in terms of what people are doing in restaurants, what they're not doing in restaurants, how do we include them and so forth. So it's really making sure you got full support from the elected officials, from the government, from all the different businesses that are being assessed. Again, the advantages, I have not found one disadvantage to being part of the business improvement district. It's taken all the politics out of how we spend our dollars, everything out of it completely. It gives the power back to the hotels and the tourism industry to really move those dollars forward to benefit all of yourself directly. You're not having to worry about what I guess I want to say is you're not really required to say, what is the outcome from those dollars necessarily, but you want to anyway. So you want to say, we're spending X number of dollars on this, here's the return on investment. But any of those that you've been involved in marketing, it is very difficult to show return on investment from a marketing perspective. So if somebody does not understand marketing, sometimes they have a hard understanding for that. So I'm a big believer in research, and research doesn't always have to be that expensive, especially with online now. We just did some more research recently online with consumers, and the information you can get is incredibly valuable. And so what we've decided to do with our first year of the Tourism Marketing District was we did a benchmark. Here's what the perceptions are, again, kind of the destination prior to the ad campaign. Here's the perceptions of the ad campaign, and then here's your perceptions or awareness of the destination after the ad campaign. So we can kind of show the benchmark. So this is our first year. It shows what our benchmark is, where we're at. And so every year going forward, we'll always continually do that to hopefully show that our marketing efforts is creating greater awareness, hopefully motivating people to travel there and overcoming some of those perceptions. And then the big image study that we did a few years ago, we'll probably do that every 5 years. And that's a much more in-depth study from that standpoint. So there was a question.
Yes. Prior to putting these organizations together, did the cities take some of the TOT and devote it to tourism development? And did that change after you did that?
Yeah, so prior to 2008, the CVB was 100% funded by the cities through TOT with a little bit of private reserve, private revenue. So when the bid was created in 2008, the CVB said, we're going to give you 75% of your TOT back, if that makes sense. Each city still has their own marketing person or sometimes marketing campaigns. And that's where it becomes a little bit complicated, I guess you could say. And I'm a kind of outspoken opponent to that to a certain degree. So Palm Springs spends about $2 million on their Bureau of Tourism. Rancho Mirage has about $600,000. Palm Desert has $500,000. Indian Wells has $500,000, and so on. And they're all promoting their individual cities because it always comes back down to our brand and who we are and so forth. Although, if somebody's in Indian Wells or La Quinta, when they call home, where do they tell them they're at? Palm Springs. So And that was one of the challenges that we also had when I was in Palm Springs, is that a lot of the small hotels and so forth in Palm Springs felt like anybody using the name Down Valley was hijacking the brand, right? So we had to overcome that conversation as well. So so you kind of have those dynamics that are going on. So you can imagine when you're trying to position yourself as Greater Palm Springs, and the small hotels think you're hijacking their name for the benefit of Down Valley, and they start whispering in the politicians' ears and so forth, you can imagine where all this goes. Now you're going to spend more time trying to convince or try to unravel or try to justify why you're doing this. And again, I'm a firm believer that everything has to be done around the consumer, around the customer. Who are you trying to attract? It's really about what their perceptions are of your destination, what's important to them, how do they look at things, and so forth. And that was the reason why we did a lot of research prior to setting up this TMD and during the TMD. Because when we start to get some of the questions about this or that and so forth, we show them the research and we tell them, look, this is what the consumer is thinking. This is what the consumer thinks about the destination. This is how the consumer perceives the destination. So, so then you find a middle ground and you try to find so forth. But at the end of the day, you don't want to, what's the word? You don't want to, there's an old saying by committee, you know, there was a committee that got together to build a horse, and what did they get? A camel. So that's how the camel was invented, by committee. So we kind of use that a little bit as an example. We want committee, we want inclusiveness, but at the end of the day, we're hiring experts, whether it's the branding expert, the media expert, some of the research that we're doing, and really sit down and say, okay, you don't like this picture, but you don't like this, or you don't like this color, or this saying, or this publication, whatever it may be. Let us show you the data behind it, why we picked that. So we have to always have supporting data as much as we possibly can. So there's two options that you can form under a TMD. We're under the 89 Act, or you have the option of the 94. So to keep it real simple, the 89 Act, which both of our bids are under, have to be renewed every single year, right? The 94 Act, you form it once, it's good for 5 years, and then it's good for another 10 years. So that's the good news. The bad news is, if you're all in support and you really want to do the Tourism Marketing District, my recommendation is do the 94 Act, right? So the difference really between the two is under the 89 Act, it takes basically more than 51 votes to vote against it. So so you send out the notices and you say, want to form a tourism marketing district, you inform all the businesses that you're going to do this, you have to have public hearings and so forth. And at the end of the day, people either say, they don't have to vote at all, so there's no voting unless you're against it. So nobody has to say a peep. So if you're against it, then you write in a letter and says, I'm against this TMD. And they note, they have to note it, the organization has to note it and keep track of it. The value of your vote is on the estimated revenue that you will contribute to the TMD. And we're going to kind of go through that process a little bit. The 94 Act, you have to have 51% or greater voting yes. So that is a voting process. So if you can get everybody engaged and voting and is positive to it, then the 94 Act is the way to go. But it's a little bit of a stronger process because you have to get everybody to vote, and you've got to get at least 51% or more of those votes to count. So in that case, a larger hotel with, say, 40 rooms is obviously going to have a greater weighted vote than a small hotel with 5 or 6 or 10 rooms, if that makes sense. So that's important to know. So you really want to know who are all your hotels in your district, how many rooms do they have, how much TOT are they generating. You can figure out the value of 1%, 2%, whatever you decide that you want to do if you're going to go down this path, and you can figure out what the value of that vote is. Is it 5%, 10%, 12%, and so forth, as you can imagine. So but the nice thing with the 94 is you're only going to do it, it's good for basically 15 years. You do it once, you're coming back 5 years later to kind of check on it, make sure it's doing right. And obviously there's meetings and things that are happening along the way, and then it's good for another 10 years, maybe even longer in some cases, it just depends. So the first part of a TMD is typically what you have to do is we form a steering committee. So in our case, we took a portion of our board, got them together, we created the steering committee, really looked at all the data and the research and so forth, and basically went out to the community and said we want to add a separate tourism marketing district. We did outreach to all the hotels. Like I said, we did over 100 meetings with over 200 people to try to inform them about this. Again, we tried to do it in too short of a window. In hindsight, we probably should have given it a year to try to get the small hotels and vacation rentals on, so sometimes you might have to give it more time. And there's some people you can give them 10 years and they're never going to come around. And those are the individuals that win the lottery and they complain about the taxes. So they're always going to complain about something, no matter what. They're always calling up and complaining about something. You're never going to win them over. So once you get through the outreach, then you got to develop a business plan and bylaws, because you have to show the group, here's what, here's our bylaws, here's how the board is going to operate, which is very important, how they're going to be governed, and you want to start a little bit of a business plan. It doesn't have to be the exact business plan down to, but you can say, for this Joshua Tree Gateway Communities, these are our top 3 priorities that we really want to focus on, and the money is going to be allocated to those 3 priorities. Maybe it's 30%, 50%, 40%, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Come up to some type of agreement. You don't have to get down to this is what the ads are going to look like, or this is what this is going to do, or whatever it may be at that particular point in time. But if you can go further down the path, that's always good, because then you have a greater collaboration between everybody. Then you go through the approval process, and Gene could probably speak on this better than I can, but we got to send a letter out to everybody. We got to put notices in the newspaper. We have to have 3 public hearings along the way. You have 1 public hearing for people to come in to either protest or accept. Then we have in our case, we have the JPA. We put it on the agenda. It allows people to come in and speak about it. They basically approve, at that point, the resolution for it. We have to wait another period of time, I think 30 days minimum, and then they can approve it. And again, it gives people an opportunity to come in and speak on it if they want to. And at that point, it's approved, and then you can start assessing your businesses. I think it has to be over 30 days, right? So we approved it in June, so the first assessment started August 1st in that case.
Is the Joint Powers Authority the local government for this purpose?
It is, yeah. So the Joint Powers Authority is, each city will appoint 1 elected official to sit on this JPA executive committee. So in our case, the mayor of Palm Springs, the mayor of Cathedral City, city councilman from Rancho Mirage, city council from Palm Desert. So it's 1 elected official from each city that's appointed by the mayor. So sometimes they stay on for a number of years, sometimes they get reappointed because of obviously changes, and then 1 person from the county as well. So there's 9 members of the executive committee, and again, those 9 members approve our budget. They approve any checks over $25,000. Any of my expense reports get approved by them. What else? That's, if we make any changes to like our pension and so forth, they have to obviously vote on it and do resolutions. So there's certain things that need to be presented to them, and they have to pass a resolution on that's within the state and highway business district kind of code, so to speak. So our lawyer, Steve Q, has all that information. He always keeps us kind of informed to make sure we're doing everything we possibly can to be in compliance with everything. And we give them updates in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing. One of the things that we created when I came here is a thing called Monthly Measure. And the Monthly Measure is a report that we send out once a month, and it recaps every department on everything that we're doing for that particular month. How many groups did we book? How many people to the website? What's the star report, meaning the occupancy and all of that? What FAMs did we have in? So it's about 50 pages now? 30 pages now? It feels like 50. So 30 pages now. And we send it out once a month because we don't meet every month. When I got there, we were meeting every month. So we were making things up to talk about everything because, only so much can happen in 28 days. So we convinced them to meet 6 times a year, and they're much happier with that. And so in the summertime, we go dark in July and August. We come back in September. We go dark in October. We're back in November and so forth. And then during season, it's a much better process from that standpoint. There's a hand up back over here.
Yeah. Joshua Gateway Communities is a little bit different because a large part of that area is unincorporated. We're not part of the city. We're part of the county. And have you ever been any place that's...
Now, we're like that. We have county hotels. And so what happens is when you do your TMD, you're going to set boundaries. So as long as your boundaries are within the governments that are approving it, you're fine. So the San Bernardino County would have to approve your tourism marketing district for them to participate in it. So most likely they will approve it as long as the hotels within that county are for it. So that's really, that was a big thing for us. The county, for them, it's a process that we have to go through. They don't like it or dislike it. I mean, they like it because it obviously generates jobs and revenue and it helps them succeed. But at the end of the day, the first TMD goes to the county. So our first TMD was set up through Riverside County. So they collect the dollars. From what I understand, they really did not want to do it because now you have the admin staff at the county saying, oh my God, I got all this TOT dollars in. Technically, if you really want to get into technicalities, they're on the hook if there's a lawsuit or something like that. So you basically have to you basically have to go to them and say, we're going to, waive your responsibilities for all of that. The JPA will take on that responsibility. So the ironic thing is you can assess a business, the business then can turn around and sue you, but you can use their own assessment money to protect your lawsuit, which is a beautiful thing about this TMD. But if you're getting into that, then you got bigger issues to deal with. If from that.
I was just concerned about how the unincorporated.
The county is part of both the Tourism Marketing District and the BID. So let me go back up a little bit on the Tourism Marketing District versus the bid. The first bid, we had a different lawyer who really didn't know bids. We set it up through the county. It was a very bureaucratic, red tape, convoluted process of how they did that. Our new legal representations from Civitas, who works with our lawyer, came in and said, you're a joint powers authority. You have the ability to form a bid. You don't need to go through the county or any of the cities. So with the new tourism marketing district, the hotels pay us directly. So the hotels pay us directly. If the hotel doesn't pay, we write them a nice letter, then they get into penalties. You got to set that all up in your ordinance, what the penalties would be. You have the ability to go after them, you have the ability to sue, you have the ability to send them to collections, whatever it may be. So we've had a couple hotels that we had some issues with, but they were we figured out they were going through transitions of sales, sat down with them, worked it out, and got it taken care of. But we wanted to make sure the new owner realized they were in arrears of their business improvement district. They weren't large numbers, so it was fairly simple. So our long-term goal is we'd like to get rid of the county bid and really just have one bid where the hotels pay all 3% directly into us. In order to do it, we've got to dissolve the TMD and the bid and form a new one. So it's going to be kind of fun. So you got to form the new bid first, set the date to collect afterwards, dissolve the other one, and then it all gets started. I mean, it's going to be fun doing that. But that's kind of our long-term goal. Then all the hotels are paying us directly. There's one business improvement district, and it makes it much easier. So you can write, so we're in the process of updating our joint powers agreement with the cities, and part of what we're trying to do in that agreement is provide language that allows us to do that without having to go back to each city and get city council approval, because 9 cities can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It depends on how, get on their docket and explain it to them and so forth. So we're trying to work through that language to say, look, we don't want to grow from the 3%, we just want to be able to modify it to make it more efficient, which I think everybody's going to be happy with, because for a short period of time, some of the cities collected the money and paid us, and the elected officials were, oh, that's fine, we'll do it, and then the admin staff were like, no, we don't want to do this. So we've got them all paying us directly now. We've changed our ordinance in that regard, and we'll probably do that with the county as well. Did I forget anything? No? Okay. Gene's my expert. Gene Avner, who works at the CVB, keeps me all on the straight and narrow here. So she does a little bit of everything for us. She's HR, bid, improvement district expert, everything, board expert. So some people out there, obviously realize that maybe bids or tourism marketing districts aren't that important. Well, in California alone, they generate $140 million in funds for tourism promotion. So for every dollar invested, it returns $70. We just did our ROI report for the tourism marketing district that we had. For every dollar we spent, the community got back 178. So huge numbers. So even if we say, let's say, oh, that's a little bit too crazy, marketing people, research people, let's cut that in half and say it's, even if you cut it in half, it's still a good return on investment, $1 for every 60, $1 for every, so you can't really argue the investment that we're having or what the investment or the benefits that TMDs have as we go through all of that. So it's huge for the economy. And then one of the things that we do every other year now is an economic report. I can tell you the economic report has been huge benefit, not only for us as an organization, but us as an industry. So as an example, so we were able to quantify how many jobs, both directly and indirectly, are being created within the tourism industry, how many state and local taxes are generated, how many federal taxes are being generated. So we hired a company called Oxford Economics, who has a division called Tourism Economics. That's what they specialize in. Adam Sachs, he's great. The data they can pick, we can give you the link to it or give you the full report if you want it. But what happens now is when we sit down with elected officials, or we're sitting down with developers, or we're sitting down with just about anybody, and we start showing them these data, it really opens their eye. It really solidifies the power of what the tourism industry is. The biggest number is probably the 12 million visitors that we get each year. Before we did this report, we were going and asking people, how many visitors do we get? And the numbers were all over the board. Our numbers were all over the board. So, and again, it's not 100% exact science. We're not counting every person that's coming into the valley and so forth. So the tourism economics, they take probably 5, 6, 7 different data sources and start bringing them together. They look at the traffic, the airport, the hotel occupancies. They look at everything and start to derive their numbers. So 5.5 million stay overnight. 4.5 billion in spending. And then I put in international as well because international is contributing 870 million into the destination. So, and I think international, especially in the summertime, is our biggest opportunity, both for us and for you. The more Germans, the Brits, the Europeans, now Asia, China, and so forth, the Japanese, so everybody's fighting for that almighty marketplace dollar in the international market. We've really forged our relationship with LACVB. Bob Tebow, who's our VP of Marketing, was there for 15 years, so he's got a good relationship with them. So we want to make sure that we're considered a kind of a gateway or an adjunct to LA, if that makes sense. And they're okay with that because they realize they're competing with Vegas, San Francisco, and other places. So now they look at this region, our region, your region, everything, as a added value to LA, whereas in the past, we were competitors. And so I think over time, because of everything that's been going on and maybe the leadership there and here, we've been able to sit down and say, look, we can help each other a lot because we can get them out here for a little while, maybe we can get them back to LA, so fly in and fly to LA. 'Cause we need to show the European visitors and the international visitors that there's enough to do within the region. You don't have to leave. You're always going to get ones that are going to go to the Grand Canyon and Vegas and so forth, but their second or third trip, we need to show them that there's enough to do here locally that you need to come back in the future. You don't need to go on to other places. So it's part of the challenge. So that was it on as far as my overall presentation. I'll continue to talk and answer questions and kind of go through it all. So what is the thought that this group wants to try to get the different communities together to organize a tourism marketing district? We got a laugh. We got a comedian over here.
Yeah, no. That would be one thought. I do have a question though about, I just want to get clear. Say you have your 51%, we have all these vacation rentals.
Okay.
I own one of them.
Okay.
Individually, we're insignificant in terms of our TOT and all this kind of stuff. Together, it's a pretty significant source of revenue, I think. But I just want to get clear, if 51% vote for, does that mean that the other 49% are then obligated to pay?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It becomes a law.
Right.
Yeah, so everybody has to pay. Yeah, there's no ands, ifs about that. And if they don't pay, you can essentially, you can go after them for back taxes, or in this case, back assessments. It's not a tax.
And who would be that you that did that?
Well, in this case, it would be us. Well, it depends. So if they're not paying their bid, in our case, which is done to the county does that for us. The county will write the letter, but they work it. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, the county will say, hey, XYZ Hotel is arrears on this. It's been 2 months. What do you want to do? We'll pick up the phone, call them. If we don't get any response, we'll say send a letter. Then we'll send a letter. And for the most part, we'll take control from there. So we have a lawyer, Steve Quintanilla, who then would draft a letter legally. It's not got to the point where we've had to take them to collections or to court or put liens. We can, as a JPA, if you form a JPA, you can do liens. And then in some cases, if somebody's going bankrupt or if there's a really bad problem, then you just have to write it off as bad debt and then move on from there. Fortunately, knock on wood, we've only had a couple of scenarios, and most of it was because there was a transition in ownership, or the new owner came in and had no idea. They had first time they ever owned in a hotel, and they're just trying to figure out how to check people in at the desk, and it's always it's a little smaller hotels that will run into some confusion. So that's why I go back to the communication is important. Communicating not only, you can't just communicate via email and postal service. You got to actually go out and sit down and meet with them. And so, in our office, we have a division called Community Relations, but it's really all of us making sure that we're constantly doing outreach to the different assessed businesses, make sure they understand how they're being assessed, understand how we're spending the money. We want to make sure that they fully understand how things are operating, if that makes sense. We'll go here and then there.
Because of the county's budget cuts, they cut TOT taxes revenue to organizations such as Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for you to help us with setting up a meeting with the county supervisors or the representatives to make a presentation like this. This is quite impressive.
Sure.
I think they
I'd be happy as you meet with them, I'd be happy to meet with them as well. It's San Bernardino, so I don't have the relationship with San Bernardino. Our relationship is with Riverside County, but if you say, Scott, in the future, we're going to sit down with San Bernardino, and I can be there to help answer any questions, whatever you like. But the bid, that protects that. So when you get into recessions and different situations, and the county starts to have to move money around, or a city has to, because you can do this through a city, as you know, they have to make decisions. Do I fund sales and marketing programs, or do I fund police? Right? I mean, they have an obligation there. So this allows you that you're going to assess essentially you're assessing yourself. This 1%, 2%, 3%. You have the option to pass that on to the paying guest. You don't have to. That's the way the law is written. 100% of our hotels pass it on to the guests. So you just have to allocate that on the folio that they're being, here's your TOT, here's your tourism district, whatever it may be, so that the consumer can see, you know, what they're being charged and so forth. But the laws and the issue that we had in San Diego went away. They failed. John Lambeth successfully lobbied in Sacramento to change one of the bills to protect. So these are now stronger than they've ever been in the past. A few years ago, legally they probably could have been challenged a little bit in Sacramento. He thinks that they would have won, but it would have been a long, drawn-out battle. They went to the legislature and said, hey, when your original legislation was drafted, you've got some loopholes in here. We want to close those and make them more secure. So that's passed. The state realizes that there's $170 million being spent to promote California all over the country and the world, and so they realized that it's essentially a business that has volunteered that said we want to be part of this business improvement district. You know, if you've got 51% that are yes and 49% that are no, my recommendation is to try to sit down with those other 49% and figure out, okay, why are they saying no? What are the issues at hand? You know, is it a trust issue? What is it? What is the issue at hand? A lot of times the issues we've had with some of the small hotels and vacation rentals is, you know, this is not going to benefit me specifically. And yes, that's probably true. It may not benefit you today specifically, but you will see the benefits of this over time, benefiting the region and benefiting the destination. We had the same problem, you know, it's part of the perceptions where everything you're doing is benefiting the big resorts. It's not going to benefit, you know, my hotel, the Motel 6, whatever it may be. Well, they quickly realized that if the big hotels aren't full, there's no compression, they start lowering their rates. Where are you going to stay, right? You're going to go stay. You're going to take those almighty dollars and upgrade yourself to the nicer hotel. So the whole goal is that, you know, a high tide raises all boats. So you know, it may not be a direct benefit to your vacation rental, but I guarantee over time you will find the benefit, because if this group starts to be able to market itself more effectively in the digital world, the PR world, whatever you decide to set up your priorities, it'll drive economic growth to the destination. It'll help improvement, and it'll also bring a lot of interest from developers, people that want to invest in the community. One of the things that I tried to explain to the group when I first got here, and we found this in San Antonio as well. San Antonio, this was huge. When I was in San Antonio, I said, we've got to be in New York City. Oh, that's not our market. We're not in New York City. We're not in our market. I said, no, we got to be in New York City. So we went into New York City in publications. We went into New York City with PR campaigns. We did all these things. We didn't have a flight from New York City. So as you can imagine, I got a lot of resistance from people saying, you know, we don't want to spend our dollars up there because we don't even have a flight from New York City. Well, today they do have a flight from New York City. A lot of the press picked up San Antonio as a cultural icon. Well, as the press starts writing about it, what happens? More press starts writing about it. More people get interested in it. Developers become interested in it. Companies become interested in it. You've got, you know, if you're not being seen, you're not being heard in the big economic centers of the world, New York, Chicago, London, LA, San Francisco, you're just going to get left behind. So for us, and that's the same thing for Palm Springs, it's important for us that we don't spend all of our dollars, but we need to be up there. We need to have a presence. So we're kind of have that ability for people to take notice. And in the past year, we've had more press for that destination, writing about the resurgence of mid-century architecture, celebrities doing things there and so forth. It's generated an incredible amount of interest into our destination. I've probably done more one-on-one meetings with PKF and everybody else about possible hotels that want to develop there, looking for information and so forth. Some work, some don't work, but there's a lot of interest as a result of that. Where are we here? Sorry.
Do you collect 100%
of the TOT and then return 75%?
We don't collect any of the TOT. So the hotels all still pay their amount to the cities, and then the cities pay us.
The city pays you?
Yeah, for that TOT portion, yeah.
What is the current rate?
It varies from city to city. So you've got the very high end. If you count the large hotels in Palm Springs, they're at like 16.5%. The small hotels are about 11%. So the big difference there in Palm Springs is that they pay an extra 2% to the convention center debt because they wanted to build a convention center, and they give us 3%. So the small hotels are 11%, the large hotels are 16, and some change because of Visit California and somewhere else. It goes as low anywhere down Valley. I think about 11% is on average down Valley. I think Palm Desert was 9% or whatever it was, but they're upping that as well. So it's all anywhere from 11 to 13%. It's kind of somewhere in that range. Palm Springs is the highest at 16. San Antonio, we're at 16 3/4. Houston, 17%. I think the gut check level is, a good round number is 14%, 14.5 is maybe a good number. I don't know if we can. 16% is a bit of an extreme, but Palm Springs has got such a demand driver that 1% or 2% won't keep them from coming.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that's ever, as they're planning their vacation, said, "Let me look at what the TOT is before I go there." Maybe a little bit afterwards, they have a little bit of a sticker shock afterwards and go, "Oh my God, what have I just done?" But yeah, the cities collect it all.
That 16% includes our 3%.
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the actual TOT is about 13% in Palm Springs, and then they have our 3%
Yeah.
on top of that.
But when somebody checks out, I think what you're looking for is what is the threshold? So what are the numbers up here? What do you have up here?
7 and 9.
It's called a bargain.
So that's very good news. That's very good news because you got what I call capacity. So you got capacity. Go for the gusto. I mean, don't do 1%. Go for 2-3%, whatever it may be. You have to do it in balance with the cities because you don't want to piss off the cities and say, okay, I'm taking all the capacity away from the cities. So it needs to be a nice conversation between you and the cities to say, okay, the city needs to grow a little capacity. You want to grow some capacity. How do you work, kind of in tandem for this to do it right? And maybe it's a 5-year plan. So maybe you do you do the bid today at X percentage, and then with the plan that maybe we can grow it in the future if business kind of continues to remain strong. You're not going to lose. I can't find any data anywhere that says you're going to lose business because your TOT's gone from 7% to 11%. It just won't happen. Now, if you're going from 11% to 17%, then you might start to raise a few eyebrows in the media. And if the media picks it up and then people talk about it, that's when you run into a bit of a problem. So we're at capacity because for us, 3%, I can't add any. I can't go and say I want to add Palm Desert Indian Wells another 0.5% or 1% because it'll really kick Palm Springs up over 17%, and that's a big no-no. So our 3% bid is done. We can't grow that on the 50 rooms or more. The only way we're going to be able to grow it now is small hotels and vacation rentals. So we'll sit back down with them and talk to them. We wanted to get a year under our belt, show them what we're doing, and show them the things that we can now really focus on in the future. So if we add those small hotels and vacation rentals in at 1%, here's what it'll do for the community. One of the priorities, Arts Oasis, was part of CVAP. They're now under the CVB. We're funding them for a short period of time, but what I'd like to do is create a cultural tourism division, staff it, do some promotions around it, but that's going to take funding. We need air service, better air service. That's going to take some funding. So you start to set all these priorities and you sit down and say, okay, because somebody coming from New York is going to stay 4 or 5 days. Somebody coming from LA is going to stay 1 or 2 days. And that's what becomes our priority is that we go to the hotels and say, okay, you're focusing more regionally or locally. We're going to focus more nationally, internationally, because the national, international travelers are going to spend more. They're going to stay longer. They're not just going to come out for the weekend, where most of the LA visitors are coming out just for the weekend. They're coming out on, if you're lucky, Friday. If not, they're coming out Saturday morning and spend the night, go back Sunday. So it's a tough way to run a business. So you really want to say, how do we fill? Part of our priorities is how do I fill Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you're going to fill it with international, you're going to fill it with national, people traveling here from longer distances, because they're not going to fly from Chicago, New York, or somewhere else and just stay for a couple of days. Now, they may only stay for a couple of days because they're going out to the Grand Canyon or somewhere else. That's fine, but now their whole trip is a week. So how do I get them to make Monday, Tuesday part of our week, right? So you got to convince them of that. And you'll do that through rates. Much better rate on a Monday, Tuesday than on a Saturday. So that'll drive a lot of that. Whereas the cities, it's much higher during the week. LA's rates are through the roof on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because of the business traveler. And then it goes down on the weekends.
Part of what I've explored here, having everybody here, is the cultural architecture or the persona.
Mhm.
Because this place has a lot of great stuff that is not really being utilized yet because of one reason or another. And the hotels, to fill the Monday or Tuesday or whatever, are using the aesthetics, the history, the powwows, the entertainment,
Mhm.
being able to bring all the people that are locked in the corners of the world here and put them to use so that people that do come here from other countries or other states, I'm a traveler, if I go somewhere, I want to see something weird. I want to see some...
You want to see authenticity.
Color. I
Yeah.
want to see color. I don't want to just see something I can see in LA or
Sure.
Chicago or whatever. So what I have found being here past year, being in PR, entertainment, whatever, is the aesthetics and also allowing the people that are here on that 62, 29 Palms strip to actually work with each other so that the Harrison House can get a bunch of people and the little places that are at Joshua Tree up from Park Avenue, Park Boulevard, to get some consumers there. So location, location, location is the key factor, and also using entertainment.
Sure.
Using the actual people that are here. We have art tours,
Mhm.
we have other things, but the X factor to getting the hotels going is aesthetics. Making it funny, making it silly, and when people...
Product development.
To do nothing, well, maybe they want to go into the desert, have a fire ceremony,
Yeah.
something that they won't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of people here, they're all artists, they're designers, they're, the
Sure.
shamans and all that. Remember that most people that come here do not have a clue what that is.
Mhm.
And when they come here, anything you do is like, wow, I could go home and share that. So this is where the real essence, I think, where the power play is in cultural application.
Absolutely.
It's creative application.
So real quick, going back to my discussion with the cities. So the cities all have their own individual marketing departments, marketing dollars and so forth, obviously promoting their cities. So I've been going back to them and saying, spend less on marketing your city, spend more on product development. So my message to the cities are, create product that's going to drive demand and allow us to exploit and promote that particular product. And that product can be everything from a cultural tour that needs to be maybe subsidized a little bit to get it off the ground. It may be an attraction, it may be a museum, it could be an event as a product. Another product is, so one of the things we told this, like Palm Springs has done a very good job of this. So when they got the 75% of the money back, they created a rebate program. So they went to the hotels and said, all right, I'll use Palm Springs Hilton as an example. Palm Springs Hilton hadn't been renovated in 10 years. They were trying to find money to renovate it. The city says, we'll do a rebate program. So we'll flatten your tax revenue here, right? Anything that grows beyond that in the future, we're going to give a percentage of that back to you to help offset and pay for your renovation. So now the owner has a funding source, or at least a partial funding source, to help improve their product. So the city is now, it's a public-private partnership to improve the hotel. So what's happened? The rates are up, occupancy's up, so the hotel owner's happy, the city's happy because they're getting more TOT, right? And so that's what I mean by product development. Product development can be events, it can be all kinds of different things. It can be enhancements to the businesses because now the city's not having to pay any TOT, and now they might not be paying any TOT here now at all, so there may not be an offset to that. But as you start to drive more, obviously, interest and revenue into the destination, that may be another form of product development that the cities can look at to help the owner or the business improve their product. But for this destination, probably the easiest one to start off on would be events, cultural tourism events, cultural tourism tours, helping connect people. Because one of the things that we always try to do is you go to a destination, you say, I'm going to do, ABC. My job is to add D, E, F, G to that list. So either you try to stay longer and do it, or you say, oh my God, I got to come back, right? So that's what we're trying to drive, is that bucket list of things to do. So even if they get here and they don't realize that all these great enhancements are available to them, if you don't have the tourism marketing district talking about it through apps or websites or brochures or signage or whatever it may be, they're never going to know. They're going to leave not knowing that they missed out on, if I would have turned right here, I would have been able to explore or find this particular attraction.
That's something that I'm kind of exploring myself, because I belong with the Morongo Basin Historical Society. And something I started finding out is people were coming in, and I was doing little tours around the area, and they wanted to go out, and they wanted to discover like the weird tours. They wanted to know the weird history.
Sure.
So I started taking people out on my own to show them the weird history and to do little stuff. And I go, wow, this could really grow into like a little tourism business. But so I've been trying to feel that out and trying to develop that and not really knowing how to take that or where to go with that. And again, there's a group of us like out there that we're trying to make the scenic highway, scenic 247, and to build on that. So, you know, again, it's growing this and knowing what do I do next?
Yeah.
How do I go from this? Because there's a market there. There's people who, that's all they want to do. They want to go out into the desert and see the, like you said, and she's saying, they want to go off the beaten path. They want to do that.
And there's a big market for that. There's a lot of people that want that kind of different, unique, authentic experience that they're not going to find on TripAdvisor. They want to be able to, I mean, they're not going to, they want to be able to find it where that's unique from that standpoint. But they're not going to know about it unless the destination has the ability to help market you, obviously. So there's a perfect example where her business is probably not going to pay any of the assessment, but her business is probably going to drive people to stay here in hotels. So it's a win-win. So the hotels need somebody to put together these tours, and so you help support them through websites, eBlast, press tours. You bring the press up, take a tour, experience it, they write about it. Next thing you know, you get picked up in the New York Times or Chicago Tribune or something like that. Your phone's ringing off the hook. So it's kind of a nice life cycle, we call it, of the tourism industry. So everybody's in? We're going to go forward, right? Tourism Marketing District? Get it going? You're welcome. Any other questions at all?
Sorry, I want to take a technical question. Somebody really said something about the larger hotels in the process having more sway, that there was some process in which it was the entity times the number of rooms. In the voting process for the district, is every hotel and vacation rental equal in the voting process?
No, it's based on how much revenue they're going to contribute to the assessment.
Right.
So in our case, the only hotels that participate in our bid are 50 rooms or greater.
Right.
So part of the challenge that I kind of came into was that the perception was that the CVB only focused on group business, convention business. So as a result of that, everybody looked at the CVB and said, you don't do anything for me because all you do is go after groups. Because all their funding was coming from the large hotels. The large hotels are saying, here's how we want you to focus. So when I got there, I said, look guys, if we continue to just focus on groups, we're going to grow like this. I said, if we can rebrand ourselves and focus on the consumer who influences these groups anyway in one shape or form, we're going to grow like this long term. So when I got there, the board said, Scott, we want you to grow your group room nights from 120,000 to 100 or 200,000. I said, that's fine. I can hire a few more salespeople, but in 10 years, we're going to be the same destination we are today. We're not going to move the needle. We've got to rebrand this destination. We've got to figure out why are people not coming to the destination and help overcome that. And that's a combination of us marketing it, but we also need the destination creating product. So Modernism Week is an example and things like that. So that's when you go back to the city and say, you know, first of all, before you create a new event, what existing events need help to be successful that makes sense, right? So let's make sure we're helping the existing events first, grow them, and then let's look at what new events that we need to bring on board, but bring those events on board in a time period that we need them. So in our case, we have more events than you can ever attend from January through April, May timeframe, right? I mean, you can't go to all the events. There's so many down there. But come September, October, November, December, it's pretty scarce. So when people come to us with a group, you know, they're pitching it to us in April, we're saying, we're not interested. I mean, we'll market you if you do it, we'll promote it, you're fine, you're on your own. But if you bring us an event that we think is going to drive hotel stays, demand, in October, November, September, whatever it may be, December even, then we'll put some money behind it. We'll be a sponsor, we'll get involved, we'll do extra to make, you know, we want to make you successful if the board, the group, feels like that's the right event for the brand. Does that make sense? And that's where sometimes it gets a little tricky because some people say, oh, I like this event, and I don't like that event, and you start getting a little conflicted. So part of all of this is you've got to go through a brand study. You have to understand, what does your brand represent to the consumer? What do you want it to represent? What is your promise? What is your commitment? And so you develop your brand, you develop your pillars under that, and then you start looking at the events and say, does this event fall within our pillar? Arts community, culture, whatever it is that you come up with to say, these are our strengths. You know, if somebody's trying to bring something out here that doesn't fit within the brand, then you say, well, good luck, we don't want to stop you, but we're not going to spend any dollars supporting it as a group. We will put you on the website and we'll market it and so forth, but we're not going to give you $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to, you know, to be a sponsor because it doesn't fit within our brand. And 9 times out of 10, they'll go away. Because there's a lot of people out there that will shop events all over the country. They just go from city to city to city looking for money, the producers and so forth. So you have to be careful. I mean, I can't tell you how many great events have come through our door every week. Oh, this is the best event ever. But when you start asking questions, where have you done this? How have you done it? Where, you know, references and so forth, 9 times out of 10 they can't. So you have to be real careful when it comes to events. And that's why I'm a big believer in, let's look at the existing events that you have. How do we help them grow, be more successful, sustainability, product development from the city standpoint. It may be the land they're using needs to be paved, or it needs lighting, or it needs electrical, or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, we've got an event venue that keeps growing every year. So we got one event there, now we do another event, we do another event, and it just grows from there. So the city's now product development, creating yourself a venue, a pad, concrete goes down, asphalt, like, you know, a facility like this. So it gives you an opportunity. Now you got support because the city doesn't have to market it. The tourism marketing district people can say, okay, we're going to market it. We're going to bring in press. We're going to do some ads on TripAdvisor. We're going to do all these different things, whatever it may be, to, you know, promote the events, whatever the right websites might be for the event and so forth. And you got a nice supporting cycle. We're all working in harmony together. And everything's beautiful and we're all happy.
You've got a quality problem. We don't have enough events up here.
So, and I would say that we would love to help you with that. So, again, we don't look at it as competition. We look at it as an extension of our destination. When I was in San Antonio, nobody marketed the Hill Country. And Austin was only 90 miles up the road. I said, let's own the Hill Country. Let's own it. And everybody's like, oh my God, what do you mean? The Hill Country's 45 miles outside of San Antonio. Are you crazy? And it was, the international travelers loved it. So they would come into San Antonio, that would be their base camp, and then they go out to the Hill Country. Don't go to Austin, they're weird. Come down to San Antonio. So, weird works, by the way, worked for Austin. So if you want to be, you know, keep Joshua Gateway Communities weird or something like that, you know, sometimes weird works, believe it or not. And you got to recheck it. You got to recheck it every few years. But your brand is really about who you are, not what you think you are, but what does a consumer, you know, perceive you as. So for us, the consumer that knew us perceived us as an oasis. Now we have to educate the ones that hadn't been to the destination that we are an oasis. Does that make sense? We're a natural oasis. Part of the other problem we had was that they felt like we were just a bunch of rich people down there, that we bring our water in from Colorado and we're just bad people. You know, that was kind of the consensus from all that. So part of it is to educate them, hey, we've got an aquifer. We have 140 natural oases. When you go out on the Jeep tour, you can see the water bubbling out of the ground. Even in July, it's coming up out of the ground. So we have to educate them that all the water, most of the water that's coming in is going to the agriculture. Most of our water for the hotels and residents and so forth is coming up out of the aquifer. You know, just, you know, I mean, there's a balance in all of that. So part of it is just educating people on what the reality is versus the misperceptions. So, anything else at all? No? Thank you. Thank you.